Mexican art and literature after the Revolution.
Before the Revolution, art in Mexico was Spain and European dominated, and themes of Romanticism and realism were common. During the Porfiriato period, a large amount of people were experiencing the harsh reality of the revolution. As a result, people were eager to find ways to express their feelings towards the war. More than half of Mexico's population was illiterate, so many people turned to art as a form of literacy in order to convey their thoughts and emotions.
Following the revolution, the style of art in Mexico had transformed. Muralists had become increasingly popular and had support from both the president and the government. Many art pieces became very democratic and nationalistic and focused on reaching all kinds of citizens in order to unite populations following the revolution.
During this time, Diego Rivera, Jose Clemente Orozco, and David Alfaro Siqueiros, Los Tres Grandes, also known as the Big Three, were important artists. They held great influence on art and made their mark on Mexican history. As these are only a few of the most influential artists, other artists also brought change after the revolution, such as Frida Kahlo, a painter, and Sabino Osuna, an influential photographer.
Diego Rivera was a prominent Mexican painter during the Mexican Revolution. Rivera was inspired to make art that reflected the lives of the working class and native peoples of Mexico. Through art, Rivera incorporated major themes such as social inequality, the relationship of nature, industry, and technology, and the history of Mexico. Rivera was known for his murals and frescoes, which helped establish the Mexican mural movement. Rivera is one of the most revered artists in Mexico, known both for his role in the country's artistic renaissance and the reinvigoration of the mural genre.
Jose Clemente Orozco was one of the most well-known artists during this time period. He was also a part of Los Tres Grandes, which translates to the Big Three. The muralists, along with Rivera and Siqueiros, cultivated a style that would define Mexico post-revolution. Orozco stood out from the other two men by openly criticizing the Mexican Revolution and the post-revolution government. An important piece Orozco contributed on was the fresco painting, which provides stylistic elements of the Italian Renaissance. The aim behind the painting was to create a more democratic art form and to reach a wider audience. Since this was post-revolution, Orozco hoped people from all social groups would be able to see and enjoy this painting and its nationalistic theme.
David Alfaro Siqueiros used his art to express his beliefs. His artwork revolved heavily around Marxist ideology, and he showed his beliefs in Marxism even when it prevented people from hiring him. He believed it was his duty as an artist to be politically engaged and teach people through his art. He used a combination of traditional styles as well as Mexican folk styles to create his art. This shows how Mexican artists were taking over their own art scene, not only being influenced by traditional styles of other countries, but also being influenced by their own Mexican heritage. Siqueiros also emphasized the way that an individual used materials and focused on the way he himself wanted to paint, straying away from the techniques used by historically traditional artists. One of his notable pieces was a very visible mural called Tropical America, in which he uses his art to attack imperialism. Siqueiros went on to influence many artistic movements, such as Futurism and the Mexican Renaissance, and the beliefs shown in his art influenced socialism in Mexico.
Following the revolution, the people of Mexico were less devastated. About 10% of the population had died, and new ways to cope, like art, began to emerge. The new president at the time, Alvaro Obregón, instituted a large campaign for literacy through the Ministry of Public Education. Specifically, one educational program was exclusively dedicated to muralism.
The revolution also changed literature in Mexico. Before the revolution, like art, literature was heavily influenced by European countries, especially Spain. The development of the Mexican literature scene took time, with the first real novel being produced in Mexico in 1816. During the lead-up to the Revolution, there were many traditional essayists, novelists, and poets who followed the European structure for their writing. However, after the Revolution, this changed.
Emergence of the Mexican Revolution sparked the development of a journalistic genre. After the civil conflict finished, the revolution theme appeared in many novels and short stories. Along with revolutionary themes, indigenous themes became popular, which aimed to portray the thoughts and life of the indigenous people of Mexico. The revolution also promoted the development of modern themes such as rhyming innovations and symbolism.
During this time period, some of the most important and influential authors were Martin Luis Guzman, Octavio Paz, and Marino Azuela. Literature was very important during this time because it allowed greater insight regarding the revolution. Many of these writers had higher educational backgrounds, and some had even served in the revolution, giving them great writing perspective.
Martin Luis Guzman was a Mexican novelist who went on to serve in Pancho Villa's army. Guzman was eventually exiled and lived in both Madrid and New York, where he worked for a newspaper. He wrote about his experiences during the revolution in his novel El Águila y la Serpiente. This novel gave many people insight into what the revolution was really like. It impacted many Mexican people and provided them the opportunity to look at a different side of the revolution.
Octavio Paz was an important Mexican poet, diplomat, and writer because he was able to convey important aspects of life and culture in Mexico through his writing. In his work, Paz produced literary criticism in which he analyzes the character, history, and culture of Mexico. Paz was not only a great writer, but also a great poet. His poetry and literary works greatly helped influence future Mexican writers and poets.
Mariano Azuela was one of the first novelists of the Revolution. Though Azuela had a career in medicine, he began writing early on. Like most young liberals at the time, Azuela had supported Francisco Madero's uprising, which overthrew Porfirio Diaz's regime. Following the assassination of Madero, Azuela joined the army of Pancho Villa as a doctor, and it was here that he got the knowledge regarding the revolution that would soon be applied to his novels. Many of Azuela's first novels were about faith, but after experiencing the revolution firsthand, his writing became very disillusioned and sarcastic. One of Azuela's most famous novels was called The Underdog. In this novel, the main character joins forces with the rebel army and earns the position of general in Pancho Villa's army. It is said that this first part of the novel parallels to the second phase of the revolution.
Much of literature expressed nationalist beliefs and spoke of the revolution. This writing helped to unite a post-revolution Mexico, with a love for their country and an understanding of how they arrived there.
Art and literature were important during the Revolution because it was a prime way of coping during the harsh reality of the war. People turned to art because there was no skill set or level of literacy required. Art was able to unite people through the complex history of Mexico, from the conquistadors to the Mexican Revolution. As the country slowly increased in levels of literacy, literature opened new ideas and experiences to people and helped teach and grow readers. Overall, as a result of the Mexican Revolution, Mexico developed its own unique style of art and literature.